Good afternoon, fellow Thunder Ducks and 8th national champions, men's soccer team. Go Thunder Ducks, yes. 8, 2 back-to-back, and a new coach this year in his inaugural year. How exciting, yeah. So just one moment of celebration to begin to launch our conversation this afternoon. We are delighted that Chancellor Joe May, our Chancellor, is here to spend the next hour and a half with all of us in conversation. What that means is no prepared remarks, no speech, but an interactive conversation. He is going to be very interested in responding to questions that you might pose, and he's going to give us a brief overview of the work that we are so deeply engaged in together in charting the future for one college, the Dallas County Community College District, to be named fill in the blank. You have opportunities to give input to that. And as well, a number of initiatives of really major importance to us, including the bond program, the building program, and any topics that you really want to pose today. So without further ado, I'm going to ask all of you to join me in extending a warm welcome to our Chancellor as he helps us move to the vision of our next 50 years in this district, elevating students, families, and communities out of poverty into greater prosperity. Dr. May, it is our pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank all of you. Tell me if you can't see me, but I'm going to go down because I can't see you with the lights well. And I really do want to have a more of a conversation today, and kind of talk about where we are. And you know, Kay mentioned one college. I want to talk about that with you. I also want to, though, first kind of bring you up to date in terms of where I see us, where we are today. Then I'll talk a little bit about the bond issue, where we are. Many of you probably saw the D Magazine article related to the lawsuit and what that means for us. So again, thank you, and thank you for allowing me to share a little time. It's hard to believe, but I will have been here 6 years come February. The time has flown, but it's been a really great journey as we've looked at how we can meet the needs of individuals, our employers, and the communities that we serve. And I kind of want to put some things maybe in context and go back a little bit as we did. When I first came and met with you, many of you that are here today, I really talked about the focus that we were working with our board on of addressing income disparity, inequity, how we really wanted to serve those individuals that weren't taking advantage of higher education, and I referred to them as non-consumers of education, and describing them as our real competition as we see that. So we've been on this journey to reach and bring people in to our colleges that were being left behind by the economy, so that they could also take part in the incredible boom that's going on in North Texas and be a part of that. I think all of us are well aware that as we've created over this past 6 years, an average of 362 new jobs every day during that period of time. It's about 300 to 335. We brought in 362 people a day to take those jobs. And so we have been leaving people behind. So a lot of our work has been really, how do we catch up? How do we take the fact that only 28% of Dallas County high school graduates will go on and get a post-secondary credential and turn that around? And so that's when I came back and was talking about the idea of working collaboratively as a network, both internally and externally, and what that would be about. And I thought I would kind of update you where we are if we could do this. This is there? Yeah. There. Perfect. What has now, we've come to call our Career Connected Learner Network, and just kind of explaining how the pieces have come together over the last several years and how we connect. And I just start with a key component of this from the very beginning is that we didn't have to invent a lot. We already had programs. We already had services. There were things already available. But what we have to do is figure out how to connect to them, because you'll see a lot of dotted lines up there. Well, everywhere there's a dotted line, that means a handoff occurs, and that there's a transition that takes place, and often people don't take advantage of those transitions. So between high school and college, a handoff occurs, and a lot of people fall through the cracks and get left behind. 2-year to 4-year handoffs occur, and people get left behind. Even things like public transportation, we didn't have to invent it, but we had to figure out how to more easily connect our students to that so that they could take advantage of it, and so on. And I'll talk about several of these as we go forward. But the goal has always been to look at how we can bring individuals in who weren't going to college, get them on a pathway to an education, ultimately get them a job. So and I'll just kind of walk through the model, because many of us know pieces of it, but we really haven't thought about it, how all the connections work and what that looks like. And then I'll talk a little bit about what's next and kind of move into this. So when we began putting this together, the idea of leveraging learning that we had acquired as a result of our work with early college high schools over about a 10-year period in the district, when I came here and started looking at that, the data was just frankly mind-blowing. It was looking at high poverty areas and then seeing the success of students going forward. And Samuel High School in Pleasant Grove was perhaps the biggest eye-opener for me. When I'm looking at Samuel, and I'm looking at 99.9% economically disadvantaged, virtually everyone in the school is on free and reduced lunch. And then I hear the story of the early college high school and how that came together, that essentially the state was about to shut down Samuel at that point in 2010, when a new principal came in, got with Gene Conway, then the president at Eastfield, said, I don't know about these early college high schools, but we need to do something, and they're going to shut the school down, so let's try it. And so I'm looking now, when I arrive in 2014, and what I see a school that had gone from 9% of its graduates ever getting a post-secondary credential to that year, 58%, looking back, were getting a post-secondary credential, where we were seeing college readiness levels rise incredibly, where in 2010, Dallas has a school of choice within the district, so you get to pick your school that you go to. 6 bus loads a day were leaving Samuel, when I arrived in 2014, 2 bus loads a day were coming in. It had become the 3rd best performing school in the district. And so, armed with this, I said, surely we can expand and partner and work and have a far greater impact on the lives of individuals and make a difference. Turns out it's harder to partner than you would think. I actually was turned down 16 times by conversations, at least a half a dozen by the superintendent at DISD, and virtually every other one in the district, until Michael Hinojosa returns as the Dallas Independent School District Superintendent. And the very first meeting, I get together with a number of people every month that includes the city manager of Dallas, County Judge Clay Jenkins, Michael Hinojosa, Superintendent, Fred Cerise with CEO of Parkland Hospital, the head of DART, And we have breakfast one Thursday morning a month, and we just talk about what's going on, what are our challenges, what are collaborations. So Michael came to his first meeting of that, and as we were leaving, I asked him if he could stay behind. And I said, I want to talk to you about, set up a time to talk to me. He said, well, my people have already told me what you're going to ask. And he said, and they've also told me I need to say yes. And so he did. And so we began then to put together a partnership that has had a tremendous impact already, but we haven't really seen the results of it yet. It's promising as we get there. But as you know, that year, 18 of the 23 EISD schools were on the IR list, meaning improvement required. Now 0 are on that list. It was the greatest recorded turnaround of school performance ever in the state of Texas. And it wasn't just going in with PTACs and early college high school. There were a lot of other things that were happening. But that was a big part of it that changed the hopes and aspirations of that. So as we look, we started up in the upper left-hand corner here with our high school partners. This year we have 43 early college high schools or PTACs, having gone from 6 in 2014 to 43. Garland will add, I believe, 8 more next year, and we'll continue to build those out. Richardson is also expanding, and that's the great news, because Richardson wouldn't before, right? we couldn't get school districts to do it, but because it requires everybody to do something that's really hard in collaboration, and that's to let go. And that's to not make it about the transaction or about our institution or about us, but really make it about the student. And I think that has paid off. And we all know the story now, that even as we then realized that we were only dealing with about a quarter of the students with PTAC in early college high school. So we came up with the idea of the Dallas County Promise to really handle the other students that didn't see that opportunity for them. So we implemented that 2 years ago as we do it. And a lot of people think that's a scholarship. It's really not. What it really is leverage. And because our tuition is so relatively low, a Pell Grant, if you're eligible, will virtually cover the cost of that, and that will, and for most students. And that's an important piece of information, because this was the other thing that we've learned in working with high schools, that if you're in the lowest socioeconomic quartile, there's only one thing that seems to correlate with whether or not you go to college, and it's not grades, it's not ranking class, it's not the school, it's whether or not you completed the FAFSA in time to use it in a fall semester and to make that work. And when we looked at high school data on this, it was just completely random as to whether or not one school would have, in a high poverty area, would have a decent FAFSA completion rates. Another one in a better area would have just terrible, awful FAFSA completion rates. So what we learned is that no one owned that piece either. Even sometimes if they would come to one of our colleges, would often say, come back when you get this completed, or we'll work with you, or help make that happen. And so the Dallas County Promise certainly has allowed us to do a couple of things. We took it out and partnered with Commit to run it, because our goal was not just to get students into DCCC colleges. We just wanted students to go to college, period. And get a degree, and therefore we support it and we help with it. But the real return is getting more students in school. And the first year it kind of worked. We had 31 partner high schools. From those schools, our district enrollment increased it year over year by 35%. On a base of about 9,300 eligible students. Last year, it was based on 16,000 that were coming in this fall. We're up about 22% from those schools year over year, after having grown 35% the year before. Next fall will be on a base of 22,000 coming in. So the ability to take, and these aren't individuals that were going to go to college somewhere else. These are individuals that weren't going to college, period, anywhere, because they didn't see a path forward to make that happen. And then what's also really interesting about that is that when we look at who came through the Promise program and enrolled with us both last fall and this fall, they are students who basically were not P-TECH students, were not early college high school students, or had taken dual credit while we're in high school. Those students tend to move immediately. 92% of them go immediately to a four-year institution and remain there and graduate there at very high numbers. The students that were coming to us, that big growth spurt that occurred, weren't going anywhere, had not made plans to go anywhere. They had basically come from families, for the most part, as I've talked to them, and the story is always the same. My parents told me I couldn't go to college because they couldn't afford to send me. And that's the message they heard from their earliest childhood years. And the parents didn't understand Pell Grants. They didn't understand community colleges and low tuition. So we've had to help them do that. And that's really where the Promise provides leverage, because we realize with that when we go into a school, all has to mean all. When we say that all students have that opportunity, we have to really mean that. And therefore, our foundation has stepped up and said, anyone that has a gap that pledged the Promise, completed the FAFSA, and filled out an application and wants to enroll, that we will cover the cost of that. Well, we've also learned a lot of things in that process as we see students get flagged for verification, some unresolvable for no fault of their own, a little bit of fault of their parents, but not the students. We take care of that. We'll cover DACA students. We'll cover anyone that needs that help in order to get them in college. So that's kind of the work that we've been doing up in that area around the network concept. But then once we get here, just because these students are a year older or 3 months older in many cases, doesn't mean that they still are struggling, because about 82% were on free and reduced lunch. So thank you for your work with the food pantry, because the goal there is to help these students who really no longer get the meal at school, aren't able to get that same support that we have. And that's why we've brought in other services, including transportation. The DART passes are this year, 35,000 students utilize those passes in order to get to class, which sounds high, but we really need to get more, and it's still a little bit clunky. I mean, it goes back to the same thing. We didn't have to invent public transportation, but we did have to figure out how to get students connected to it. And many times this is hard, and it's not been worked out well. And part of the reason it's hard, I think, is that everyone tends to operate in their own silos and vertically, even higher education. If you think about it, where in other fields and industries, and you see a lot of business-to-business software and technology to help move things between systems. Well, in education, almost all of our technology is vertical, not horizontal. In other words, we never designed to connect ourselves to connect directly to K-12 or to four-year institutions. In fact, just getting them to share data is hard as well. Something that would be beneficial to everyone is very difficult in that process. So as we continue to build out the network, you'll see that we continue to add. I mentioned transportation. This past year, we rolled out our work in mental health. I understand that we have now had about 700 DCCC employees go through the training, including the mental health first aid training and programs, and thank you for doing that. You know, I having a background where I understand somewhat the challenge of mental health, particularly depression and psychosis, and what that can do to an individual and the challenges that they face. I knew we would have students that were struggling with that, so I was pleased when we had the opportunity to partner last year with the University of Texas, or UT Southwestern, and where they were testing a new software online, cloud-based screening system for students in higher education. They had gotten a large grant from the state of Texas to roll that out, and we were the community college pilot. They were also working with some four-year institutions in that. And I have to say, I was not prepared, however, when we were doing the end of year kind of review and debriefing on it. What did we learn? What do we need to be thinking about in the future? When the person over the project said, and by the way, the incidence of depression and psychosis within the DCCCD is 300% higher than what we're seeing at universities. And I think that reflects the challenge that we have, because we are reaching deep into families coming many times out of poverty, that lowest socioeconomic background group. So we're going to be investing again. We'll be doing another 3-year grant, but that's not a long-term solution. We're partnering with the Meadows Mental Health Institute and the Meadows Foundation to do an in-depth assessment of our colleges. It's going to take about 9 months to do it. Look at available services for each one. What's available at free or no cost in the area? Who do we need to connect to? What do we need to build out? But again, the goal to get individuals in school, help them be successful, and move on. We are going to continue. One of the topics, and we'll actually share this with the board a little bit at our upcoming meeting, talk about it. The fact that we are seeing about 8,000 of our students, we're at 82,000 credit students this year, at this fall in the district. 8,000 of those don't know where they're going to sleep tonight. They're not technically homeless. They're going maybe from family members or friends or there. We do have homeless students. I know you know that, and it's have met with them, and we'll continue to meet with them about what we can do to support and meet those needs. But it's folks that are really trying to overcome their past and what they've been through. Now, talking about things that people go through, and Richland has been great at raising dollars for emergency aid for students for many, many years going back. Our challenge has been a good way to distribute that aid and to make sure that when donors give to that they know it's going to the right people. So we've taken a couple of years to try to figure out how to manage it, because we're just too large to do what other smaller colleges where you can have an office that comes in. We estimate it would take 40 FTE just to handle. Well, I'll give you some numbers and you'll see why. So we rolled out a new platform with a startup company called Equity. We're their first client to pilot an emergency aid initiative using a software-based, cloud-based screening tool that asks them a series of questions, and then based on that, someone reviews them and decides yes or no whether they can get emergency aid. And so what we've done, just because we don't know all we don't know, we've said we'll limit it to $500 per person right now per year. You get one shot at it, and that we would budget $25,000 a month to handle that. What we didn't count on was we rolled this out on the 24th, but on the 20th of October, a Sunday, tornadoes came through the area, and we had hundreds of students. In fact, I've got a map where we plot out where all the students were living and who were in the path, and faculty and staff and others that were there. And so the timing was such with the rollout, we were hit with significant requests right away. In fact, I think we gave out 37,000 the first day instead of limiting it to what we needed. And and just to give you, by the first week, we had taken 288 applications. So you can imagine what that would have taken for individuals to go through and to determine whether or not they were eligible to do that. So we scrapped the $25,000. We then raised it to $35,000 a month. We scrapped that. We've already given out now over $70,000 since then. And we've denied probably about half of the students that applied, because there's really a couple of important questions that we want to know so that we can really help the students out. And the main thing is, are you in a situation that without these dollars, you're going to have to drop out of school? And that's really who we want to help. There are other people that have needs, but if they're going to stay in school, we'll figure out other ways to support them and to make that happen. But we're going to grow that and continue, again, to keep individuals in school linked so that we can work together. And again, I mentioned the food pantry. Thank you for that. That's been a great partnership. I saw the sheer number of meals that we've already handed out across the entire district. It's literally in the hundreds of thousands already. And I still, when I'm at one of them, always just moved by our students' gratitude for having this available, and how they've many times made this just a part of their life. Of course, the next big one that we are going to roll out is that we've known for forever, I guess, that about 40% of our students never acquire their books or learning materials, and so they're enrolled in the class. The estimates from Follett, I think they will say 30%, but the publishers are saying 40%, that they know where their books are and they know what's out there, which has led us to really spend quite a bit of time working with Follett to come up with a way that we could include textbooks and learning materials in the cost of tuition. And so we will pilot that coming up this summer with a launch next fall to make that, and appreciate all of you here that have worked to make that possible. That this way, day one, every student will have their books, learning materials all ready to go, waiting for them. We'll also solve some problems that we have with P-TECH and early college high schools about getting the books in a timely way and do that. We just need your help with this, because getting the orders in on time is just going to be critical to making this work. So thanks. We continue, and I through as we've have a great partnership, probably the best I've ever had personally, with University of North Texas, Dallas. The others are good, but Bob Mung, when he became president, really brought with him a heart for the community, for students, and understanding the real valuable role that partnering with colleges like those in the Dallas County Community College District, what an impact that can make. And so he has been an amazing partner, creating seamless pathways with us, working jointly in P-TECH high schools, creating additional opportunities for students. And while we grew 35% year over year last year with through the Promise, UNT Dallas grew 30% as a result of that as well. And so it's having a broad impact there. The real key, though, is that ultimately we know our students tell us overwhelmingly why they're here, and that's to get a job. And so the ability to connect employers, we now have 77 working with the P-TECH high schools, but those are our students and the employer partners. The beauty of that is these are really companies have invested heavily. We're just looking at some of the projects. They've taken students out of the country. They've brought them technology and given it to them personally. They're working with them on very specific projects. They're offering internships and also apprenticeship programs. And the goal that we've had, and why I talk about now the Career Connected Learning Network, or Learner Network, is that there are three things we know that an individual needs at some point in order to get a good paying job. They need the knowledge, and that can be documented by a degree or a certificate or some type of certification. They need skills. In some areas, we've built that in, particularly with our CTE programs, where you can come out with skills that are documented that you can perform, and they need experience. Now, that one we don't always do so well in helping with that piece. That's where getting more internships. We'll be setting up an internship office district-wide. A lot of you work in that space and do it, but we've not organized ourselves in a way. And frankly, companies are now saying, help. We need one place to go to. We want to support this. We want to take it on, but we need to work in a more organized way to make this happen. So we will be doing that because that's an important part. Another thing you may have seen that we've done is to work with the Department of Labor and a number of other employers to build up apprenticeship programs. Because if you think about it, if you have the knowledge, the skills, and the experience, apprenticeship is the one thing that does all three and brings it together. You get the job, you get the classroom work, you get to apply and learn the skills on the job, and you get paid and earn experience while you're there. So we've received a $12 million grant from the U.S. Department of Labor this year, and for healthcare-related apprenticeship programs. We've identified 50 different ones that we will be rolling out with partners, 8 hospital systems and the American Hospital Association. The first 2 have launched. We have 42 apprentices now at Methodist Hospital working in the patient care area, and 142 at Medical City going from an RN to a BSN in that effort. And we'll continue to ramp those and grow them out. We also received $4 million as a part of a consortium with Austin Community College and San Jacinto College in technology space, and we have one more application in for a $6 million grant to grow what's referred to as industry-based apprenticeship programs. So we'll make that happen. But so we'll be rolling those out. But what I want to mention to you as well, we're also receiving a grant from J.P. Morgan Chase, and somebody else is going to support us there too, to grow youth apprenticeship programs. The model that we're looking at is the Swiss model that would start with an individual when they're 16 years old, have them both go to school and work at the same time, getting paid by the employer but learning the classroom work with us at that time. So we will launch that in DISD, Richardson, Garland, and I think now we're going to be able to add Grand Prairie with another grant that we just brought on board. So we're gearing that out. So this kind of gets you the idea of the network and how we're connecting, whether students are on a pathway all the way through to a baccalaureate degree, into a job, or whether they're on a pathway to start their career after 1 year or 2 years, and then building out the resources through partnerships and collaboration to support them while they're on that journey to make that happen. I'll just point out quickly, along the bottom you'll see Salesforce, Greenlight, and EAB. As I mentioned, the technology really that we use runs vertically, not horizontally. So we've used Salesforce to communicate with, for the Promise program, with the student, their teacher, their parents, connect it to us so that we really bridge that gap in a real-time, meaningful way. Greenlight is a technology. Well, one of the challenges that we have is that if a student is in the high school system, so let's say Joseph May, but I fill out my application as Joe May, that requires a manual match because we have to be sure of the identity. So this creates a real delay in us being able to reach out. Talked about this, Kay, with the ability to contact students early on, bring them in. Sometimes it can take months for us to match. If we get hit sometimes with out of 80,000 transcripts that we'll receive each year from high school, 40,000 of them have to be manually matched. So we wanted to create a platform where not only could we write high school, community college, university, and employer data to the same record, but they're all connected on one record, and they're all under the student's control so that they can share them instantly without having to contact the institution. So we partnered with a company here in Dallas that's built it. We're up live on it. UNTD will go live on I think it's coming up next week. DISD is going live. Mesquite just went live on it. Garland is going live here in about 2 weeks. Grand Prairie will go live next week on it. And then we've TWU is coming up on the platform. SMU is coming up. All the UNT system is coming on board, and just 90 other school districts have now agreed to take part in that so that we can really expedite and give students real control over their records going forward. And then the EAB, that's really our Guided Pathways platform that's partially rolled out, and that'll roll out fully this spring. So that's enough on that. Let me kind of move on to talk a little bit about let me talk about the bond first, and then I'll talk about the one college as to where we are. So and thank all of you for your support on the bond package. Long overdue. We're going to have set up a system in place where we will do these on a more frequent basis than we have historically. We'll create an annual capital plan so that the board, and we can talk about that when we'll do the next one and be planning out and thinking. And we passed the bond in May with a 71% voter support, which is just a real tribute to you, because it happens because of the great work that's going on at all of our colleges. It's not what we're doing downtown, but really what's happening here in engagement with the students. And I think, too, a lot of confidence in us that we will use this in a way that will make a big difference to individuals, employers, and the community as a whole. We did then almost immediately have a lawsuit filed against the election. Now, it named us, but everything in the suit is about what the county did during the election process. So that it's mostly technical things. It can be as small as the polls were supposed to open at 7 and they opened at 7:01. Or some other issue that's there. So that's been filed. We now have a court date of February 28th. It's a non-jury trial, and the judge has been appointed because by law, if it's involving an election, you can't use a judge in the same jurisdiction where the election was. So that has happened and will go forward. Unfortunately, it's costing us months. And maybe a year by the time we're through with it to get it going. Now, we're going ahead with the planning. The board approved 12 projects to do immediately for $297 million out of the $1.1 billion bond. Our plans were to go ahead and do those 12, get them going and self-fund them anyway, but pay ourselves back with the bond money. But I'm not willing to take that risk just in case this gets delayed or go on. So we're going forward immediately with 3 of the projects that we will self-fund ourselves and get done. That includes the North Lake Construction Science Building. We've lost the lease on our existing space, so this will enable us to continue there. Go forward. We at Cedar Valley, HVAC commercial lab that we need to finish out and make that happen. And then at El Centro West Campus, we need an addition. We've grown so large there, we just can't accommodate students today at that location. So those will be the 3 that we go with. And meanwhile, we're continuing the planning, the work, looking at identifying architects. We'll continue to work on those going, so that at the moment that the lawsuit is resolved, and I kind of feel helpless in it because there's nothing we can do or say, and I'm not worried about it because of the 71% voter approval. What they're trying to do is disallow votes, claiming that certain votes shouldn't have been counted, and the count was inaccurate. But it's not going to be 53,000 inaccurate, no matter what happens. If we were 51-49, maybe I would worry a little bit, but I'm not concerned. Just annoyed at this point. Let me kind of talk about then where we are with one college and going forward. And I'll kind of explain. I know I shared a little bit with you at conference day what changed my mind on this issue, because this is not one that I had given a whole lot of thought to. The fact of the matter is, I have been, as president of Colorado Community College System, we had 13 separately accredited colleges. I was president of the Louisiana system. We had 16 separately accredited colleges. I like that fine because as far as the accreditor is concerned, I didn't exist. Hadn't gone to their meetings. I haven't participated in it. And I was perfectly happy with you having that role and me having my role in the process. And if this wasn't so public, I'd be a little more direct about about it. But I mentioned Greenlight. So Greenlight, because it's written on distributed ledger, you may have heard of it as blockchain. It allows, it has certain properties in that allows us to do some things that we've never been able to do before. And one of those, because we're writing multiple records from different institutions to the same student record, that it can see through the data and effectively know when a student who went to, say, Richland College, transferred to UNT Dallas, took the courses that they needed in order to get a reverse transfer degree from Richland. In other words, earn the associate's degree. It can actually see when that happens and notify the student that the degree is available for them. So in order to do that, the Communities Foundation of Texas wanted to support that piece of it with a grant. Ultimately, they awarded a $250,000 grant to build out the reverse transfer module and to make that work. And so I happened to be reading the proposal. It was sent to me. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't been involved in the discussion of it. But I was reading that particular proposal. And on page 2, my jaw dropped, and I had to get up and to go ask folks to find out if this, in fact, were true. What it said was that we had 2,000 students over the roughly past year and a half applied for a reverse transfer degree for one of the colleges within the district, but collectively it was over 2,000. I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember a number that only 262 received the degree, even though all of them had all the courses in their work. And that's an 84% failure rate, which under any terms is unacceptable when there. And the reason was the SACS 25% rule, that the students did not have 25% of their courses from any one of our colleges. Now, if I thought about this very much, it would have made sense because when you think about the design of the district, we didn't go out and create the same college 7 times with all the same programs and services 7 times. We created uniqueness so programs available at Richland aren't available at Cedar Valley and vice versa and throughout the district. But if I'm living here in Richardson, Garland, North Texas area, and I'm taking a degree that's offered at Cedar Valley, I don't want to drive that any more often than I have to. So if I can pick up some courses here, or maybe at Eastfield, or maybe at Brookhaven, or elsewhere, I'm going to do that because it saves me time and money. And after all, they're the same course, right? I mean, we're in the same district. Well, it turns out that we have that going on right now with about 22,000 students this fall doing that very same thing. Out there going to multiple colleges at the same time, and when we talk to them, it's not necessarily that they want to, it's the most convenient way for them to make that work. And at that point, I pretty well stood up and said, we're hurting students. Yes, we could tell them to come back and take more courses from us, but that just doesn't make any sense when they've already taken what they needed. So by moving to under one accreditation, one institution, we actually can retroactively give the students who have already earned it their degree as a result of it. So that changed my mind. And that particular event happened in June, or first part of June, and talked, presidents and I, and we had a planning session where we talked through this, went to the board, I took it to them, they approved it in August for us to begin moving this way. So let me kind of tell you where we are in that process today. So there are a couple of things. In order to do this, there is a set of paperwork that SACS requires, and we have a team of our SACS liaisons and others that are working to pull that together. It's different from a substantive change. It's different from a self-study. It really is just documenting the process. Now, part of that is that when we submit that, though, we have to be starting to look like one college. It can't be just what we're going to do. So we're going to have to be doing some implementation along the way in order to make that happen. Now, because some folks have asked, well, is this a self-study? No, the self-study was to be done in 2021. SACS has agreed to push that to 2023 to give us a little more time to get that and make that happen. But we will submit the paperwork by March 1 of 2020. They will take this to the commission meeting in June of the SACS COC. They will vote up or down at that time in terms of what, based on what's been submitted. Assuming that it's up, they will then appoint a team to come and visit us, probably early fall, like end of August, September, somewhere in that neighborhood, to get back. They will then take that to the December commission meeting and then vote it, finalize up or down, or send it back, or whatever they may do. So that's the timeline under which we're operating to get this done. Now, at some point in there, after they vote in June, we also then have to start changing a few things, like the name. Justin Lana and I went and met with Belle Whelan and her team in Atlanta at SACS some time back, and I've known Belle for half my life, and we've worked together previously and know her well as the CEO of SACS. And at one point, I made the statement about this being a Dallas County Community College District, to which she reached over and slapped my hand and said, "You're a college now. Don't forget." That's we know we've got to change that, and we know we have to do some things. So, but I am really open to names because I haven't liked anything that we've had so far coming out. So if you've got a really great idea, I want to hear it and do that. So anyway, we'll be working that route as we go forward. A couple of things I want to mention. We've got different groups now working on some different things. We've got one group that's really looking at overall organizational structure around mainly administrative functions, such as HR, budget, or business offices, other types of things that are not related to the instructional side of the house. We've got a group out of DC called the Smith Group that helped us with our educational master plan that we used to build the facilities master plan and all the bond issue off of. They were very familiar with them, so we've re-engaged them, and we asked them to go out and benchmark across the country how systems like this would be put together and what's there. So they've done that work. They came back with examples, not really recommendations, just for us to look at. But based on that, we've kind of evolved over on the academic side in this direction. And there are a lot of options, but what we're really leaning toward are creating schools of. So schools of health and human services, schools of business and finance, a school of fine and performing arts, and so forth. We've identified 7 of those that would be created, aligning with the pathway work that's already been done to make that so that we can capitalize on that and leverage that. We also, as you're aware, probably aware that we just received approval from the coordinating board for our first baccalaureate degree, which is in early childhood education. So looking at also creating a school of baccalaureate studies, because while that's our first, it won't be our last. And we will pretty immediately start to work on the second degree that we need to put together. But we're still in the input stage of this and what it would look like. But as I think about it, this is really about, as we think about the verticals, and really focus on the area. One of the things that we haven't done systematically across the district is to be able to really take a look at our program areas and identify where we need to add new programs and where do we need to grow, what are the gaps that are changing out there. So part of this will be building a bit of a team that will be part of this with instructional designers and others that will constantly be looking at what's going on in the district, what do the employers need, what programs do we need to be considering, where do they need to be located. We partner with a company called Burning Glass right now that helps us with all of our labor market work. We had them in a week or so ago, and they were showing us how they could take a curriculum. They as a company, they scan job announcements every day, over 1 million a day. And what they do is they put together maps based upon that of what skills employers are looking for. And just because of the sheer number that they're doing, they get a pretty good idea of what's out there. And then they can take that and apply it to a curriculum and look at where the gaps and overlaps are that's in there and advise us in that area. So we want to be really thoughtful as we have this chance for the first time in 50 years to really think differently in how we do this. Additionally, as part of this, one of the areas that I personally have felt that we haven't invested in enough is professional development all the way around, but particularly for faculty is supporting that. So looking at how we create something that's supporting that, utilizing faculty to lead it. In the past, when I've set these up, we've had full-time faculty. Sometimes they would be for a year or two working in there, helping their colleagues, normally offering some type of program every day, bringing in vendors and new technology to try out and to look at and to partner with. So I've asked several faculty, Carlos, as you know, and you're involved directly in that, to advise me as to what we need to be doing and what we need to be considering in this area going forward. The structure right now we're going to be looking at exactly what that looks like, but for the most part, what we have at the college, Kay will be president, others in the leadership role going there, but we do need to really figure out how we connect up through particularly the schools of concept, and right now we're in the early stages of that. She's pointing at her watch to do that. So as we go forward, we have teams working in a lot of different areas. Let me anticipate a couple of questions if I could real quickly. One of the questions has been, does this mean that I may have to work somewhere else other than where I am now? The reality is right now there's no such thing as a Richland College employee. Every employee is an employee of the district as such, but we maintain you where you are here at Richland College, even though we have already the ability to do otherwise. That's really not something that is part of even the discussion, because I can't really see a need. Now, there may be some administrative areas where we want to do some things to help. We know that there could end up being some amount of shuffling there, but we're going to be very thoughtful for that, and we've agreed to work with the local campus to do that in a way that makes sense and is responsive to the individuals that are involved. On the instructional side, I don't see any real difference at all. We are going to need to align programs into the schools but we can handle that and manage that, I believe, in a very direct way. So with that, I really would like to hear from you, get some questions, feedback, thoughts, anything that's on your mind. And I know we probably have microphones here somewhere. Sure, go ahead.
I guess my question is, you were just talking about the Smith Group and everything. What are some of the examples of the different colleges that have already morphed into this one college model that we can look at?
Sure, and we've got a number. They benchmarked against Miami-Dade, benchmarked against like Maricopa, looked at, Houston. So all of them are somewhat nuanced. I'll just take Houston. What Houston has gone to are really campuses with specializations, such as a healthcare campus that's out there, and they've kind of done a little bit more geographically. I don't think we're in a real position to do that. That would require really realigning things in a pretty dramatic way. So that's not really part. But just as an example, they've also there centralized gen ed. So that it is central and not housed on specifically at one of their locations. Others like Miami-Dade have really built it around signature programs of excellence in terms of what they've done. They do have a healthcare campus, but then they also have other things kind of mixed in there going forward. So that's really kind of what we're looking at as we get there. With us, because we have a history, and frankly, we want to support things in the right way. It makes sense that the programs obviously stay housed where they are, but that we administratively manage that from a curriculum side while operationally being handled locally at the site. So that's kind of how we got there. There were about 8 or 10 others that as well. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's the idea. With one college, it will be just one. And so they won't be at any one, like they are now, that would have to go to 2 and go through the registration process all over again. This will make it a whole lot easier for students to do. The same thing with partnering with universities and also employers. This will make it easy. I will tell you, that's the one group in K-12 that are kind of applauding this just because of the challenge that they've had to do to deal with each of us separately. Others, yes. You know, that's part of our discussion this year with the budget, and we're really looking at that, but I appreciate the concern there too. I understand. We are going still in the process of taking a look at that overall and you know, we didn't, you're right, this past year, but that's something we've said we'll look at for the upcoming year.
My question, I'm wondering that are we going to use the same course materials for each subject? For example, lab manual, textbook. Are we going to use the same?
I'm sorry, that again, I couldn't quite.
Are we going to use the same textbook and course materials?
Okay, yeah, we're not. The way the textbook is going to work is whatever the faculty choose now, that won't change as such. You'll get to pick whatever you want, the way that you want to put it. Hopefully, we're doing it in a way that will give you a little bit more information through the followup. We do want to encourage, where possible, to go as low in cost as we can, but meet your needs as a faculty member, only because our agreement with Follett says that if the cost goes down, then they'll drop the cost to us. Right now, it's $20 a credit hour that we have added to tuition to cover it, and we've made a commitment to the board and with Follett that if it gets lower than that, we'll pass that savings back on to students. As you may be aware or not aware, we stopped really 5 years ago taking any profit off the sale of textbooks or learning materials. That was my hope, that we would raise the percentage of students buying them. It did go up about 6%, but frankly, it's just not nearly enough to have the impact that we need to have in order for students to be successful there.
Dr. May, you mentioned the Meadows Mental Health Institute.
Yes.
And some sort of a survey that's taking place. Can you expand on that a little bit more? I know you mentioned it was going to be looking at the resources around the communities, but a little more information might be helpful.
Sure, and I may not have a lot more than that, but let me do the best that we can. We realize that it is a significant issue, and we are going to be investing ourselves. In fact, I'll be setting up an Office of Health, Wellness, and Basic Needs that actually at a high level of the district to help us really pay attention and look at this. But in talking, we really haven't it's kind of like the network behind us. There are lots of services available, but we haven't connected to them in a way that makes it easy for students to engage. And what we found is that we really have to do the heavy lift on this. And you may have experts, and you may be in terms of this field. I'm not, and we don't really where we are. So we've asked Meadows to do that. The Meadows Foundation then has agreed it's going to cost them about $400,000 to do the work, the interviews, the surveys, to look at it, to map it all out. So and they'll do that over a 9-month period to make that happen. But it's really again kind of trying to learn about some areas that we really haven't organized ourselves to be to be able to really respond in the way. And certainly that doesn't mean that we, I know we have counselors, we've got others that can help in that space, but the question I had, and I'll just go back to the UT Southwestern, it was my hope when we entered into that agreement last year that not only would we have an idea about how to screen and provide services for them, that they would be able to help us figure out organizationally, staff-wise, what we do. Turns out that's not what they do. What they were really interested in is the research on the screening methodology and whether or not that could be scaled, and they're looking at now rolling that out across the state. So that was helpful, but not helpful enough. And that's when I went to the Meadows folks and said, hey, we've got this. We worked with UT Southwestern. We know what's going on, but I don't really know what to do about it and how to proceed. So that's kind of where that came.
Dr. May, to what extent will distance learning be centralized? And what will that look like?
That really hasn't been a discussion that I've been part of at this time. Carlos, we really haven't talked about that at all. It's not come up as such. So I don't. As far as I'm concerned, it stays the way it is for now. But certainly that's something we could look at and see what we need to do.
One of the things that makes Richland unique is we have an honors program, and we have the only honors student center in the district. We have the only honors program coordinator, me. We have an honors advisor. So I did have all 7 colleges in a room yesterday to discuss honors and how that might look across the district. So I'm just giving you a heads up that we're meeting and we want to get ahead of this.
That's great. And this is actually something that I really wanted to see, is that where we have best practices going on, that we can share those and we can grow them out. We were just talking about a program at Brookhaven as well that is only there, and how we can take that elsewhere, and what we can do. Obviously, the goal is to improve opportunity for all students. That's there, allow them to take advantage of it. And let's face it, geography is a big driver of where students attend. So the more we can make program services opportunities available, the better that is for everyone. Thanks for doing that.
Dr. May, I'm the lead faculty and coordinator for the teacher education program here at Richland. And I understand we have an early childhood bachelor's program coming up. And I have students who are graduating in May, and they're asking when will they be able to enroll for classes leading to the bachelor's degree, and will they be able to enroll here at Richland?
Great question. The coordinating board has approved it. However, we still need SAC COC approval. That will also go before them at the June meeting at the same time. So, assuming approval, we'll be able to roll that out. Fall of 2020 is what we're looking at for that. That's you heard that. That's for the early childhood degree. Let me mention one that is on the horizon too. With the growth of the P-TECH highs, what we're producing, are about to produce, is a record number of AAS degrees in a whole variety of fields that are there, with some AS, but a lot of AASs. As you know, those are really not designed to transfer in most cases. So the next baccalaureate that we're looking at will be either a Bachelor of Applied Science or Applied Technology, which essentially will be the last 2 years, so that we're designed it in a way that students could then get the baccalaureate degree and make that work. While I'm on the topic kind of also of curriculum and degrees, we kind of stumbled into something at El Centro recently that I realize is very powerful. You may have seen the announcement with Amazon, the cloud degree. You're going to offer that here at Richland. We also announced a partnership with Google where we partnered with them to take an existing certification, the Google IT support certification that has a value it's a 6-month certification process offered by Google that has a market value in Dallas of about $50,000 plus a year for 6 months. That's the value of it. And a lot of jobs require it. But we haven't offered that and put that into it. Part of the problem is it takes some work to get it into curriculum. So the folks at El Centro worked with Google and embedded that into credit courses in a way that they could still, in 6 months, get the certification, but they also receive credit that they could then work on. Now, what I realized in that is this happened to be a cohort of 28 students. They were all year up, if you're familiar, which means they're coming from a disadvantaged background. They've have dropped out of school at some point. And so the 28 went through this as the cohort. All 28 were hired at an average of $53,000 a year for that after 6 months. So the beauty of that, instead of working, they're going to work anyway, right? All of our students work. So instead of working in fast food, now they're working at Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, Federal Reserve Bank, other places where these are in need. So we're looking really to shift where we can to a certification first approach so that we can get a market value certification early on in the curriculum so that students are going to work, but let's get them some of that experience in the field while they're doing it and add value. So we're talking to Salesforce right now as it relates to marketing. We're talking to Apple and other folks that are out there as well to make that happen. So other questions or comments?
Dr. May, I don't have a suggestion for a name change, but I'm hoping that when we do change names, we maintain some semblance of the current names that are in existence and that we don't go to a geographical naming like Tarrant County did.
No. It will be, what we're going to is a branch campus model that's there that has a lot of advantages at the federal level. You can still eligible for your own grants and things of that nature to make it work. And so Richland will stay in the name, but we do have to go with an overarching name like Dallas College, which I'm not excited about, but we're going to have to do something, and then much like others, with the Richland as part of Dallas College. So we'll sort all that out, but the name, and that's the other thing. Athletics obviously are going to stay as tied to campuses, other areas that will there. We want to keep as much of the unique flavor as we can and related to each of the locations that are there. I think that's pretty important from both not only a continuity, but certainly a source of community pride and identity. So we want to maintain that. I don't know. The question is, are we going to a new logo? That's not been on my radar, to be honest. No. Let's just say no. But I don't know. Okay.
Dr. May, I'm Janae Pelsley with the Process Improvements and Projects team. My question is relating to the level change obtained by Brookhaven College for the the early childhood education baccalaureate program. What type of an impact does that have as we move to one college? What impact does that have on our community college status?
Yeah, great question. It will change the status for all of us. So what we're doing is actually consolidating under Brookhaven because they will have the baccalaureate. That will allow us to bring it, effectively make it available for the entire district without having to do any additional changes as a result of it. And then we'll change the name of that and rework it. But there was a thought I had on that relative to your question. It'll come to me here in a minute. But the idea there is that as we grow this out, the district really helps us out in some ways with that. To make that option available. Justin, am I missing anything there? And I know what I was going to say. One of the things that's really kind of odd is that to the state of Texas, only the district exists. To SAC COC, really only the colleges exist as such. So that when we submit our reports, you may be aware, it's really problematic because we have to submit as the entire district. The coordinating board won't allow us to use college name when we submit information and materials there. So, which is why then when the law passed, if you read almost every statute that gets passed, it references that the district. So in this case, the district, the 10 districts that were offered the ability to, are given the ability to offer baccalaureate degrees, were limited to 3. That's why we ended up limited to 3, because from the state and coordinating board point of view, it's just the district is the entity right now. So not that we wouldn't have shared that through Brookhaven elsewhere, but this really, I think, gives us a lot more flexibility to build out and do some things differently.
Chancellor May, I'm a dual credit advisor here at Richland.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, we waive tuition for our dual credit students currently. When you bring on the digital library, will we be able to waive all of that?
Same deal.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, the way it actually works right now is this way. We waive the $59 per credit hour. The school districts or the school buys the books and learning materials. So what this will do, the school will actually technically still do that, only they will do it for a $20 flat fee, at which will cut their expenses in half. And instead of doing the order of their own, we've had some. In order, I guess, to save money, and because it was under the school responsibility, they would not use, in many cases, Follett to order the books, which meant students showed up without them late. This solves that problem as well. Homeschool, if the students are enrolling with us for credit, they fall under the arrangement and they'll get the books. It will be the $79 per credit hour, all inclusive.
Dr. May, as we go on for the online for the books, what about those students that may still be in the digital divide where they don't have access to it, or if it comes down to finances, they have to give up their internet in order to pay something else? How is that going to be arranged?
Yeah, thank you for a great question around the digital divide. Right now, about 48% of our existing learning materials have a digital component to them. So that's already out there as a reality. But what we've realized, it does no good to give everyone access to all if they don't have the tools to use it. So we we had already negotiated actually with a vendor to provide a reader that would access the web and be useful. We were looking at the Amazon Fire. Since we delayed that process primarily because of the bond and a few other things that came along, we'll go back out and renegotiate that again. And we haven't determined exactly how that's going to work, but we want to make that part of the inclusion in the with the deal at least one time. If you lose it or something, then you'd be on your own. But we haven't worked all the issues out with that. Another conversation that I'm having is a South Dallas problem, in that while internet is available to every home in Dallas County today, there are almost no exceptions to that. It doesn't mean that you have the money to turn it on. And so have reached out to AT&T, and we're having conversations with them about what some type of arrangement would look like, so that if the problem was that they didn't have access, could we partner with, can we work with their foundation? What can we do to make that available to students whose families really can't afford that, and make that a reality for them? I don't think it'll have an impact. Do you know because what we've done is that used to be a separate process. The books from now it's just tuition, and all rolled up in there and at one time. So once they've done that, the system will if they've got the money to pay the tuition, then the book orders will go in at that point. The idea being that the bookstore will then take them off the shelves, put them in a bag with the students' names on them, and then the digital content would be put on the digital bookshelf, ready for them to access immediately.
Could you elaborate how grants are going to be under one college?
Say that again.
Could you elaborate in how grants are going to be
Right.
under one college?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of things we're doing to work this out. I've been up to DC. I've met with the Department of Education folks and kind of talked through them. And basically, there are three different or four situations that exist. Financial aid is already rolled up under one college. Everything we do goes through Cedar Valley right now. They act on behalf of all the colleges in the district. So that's basically unchanged as we do that. Other grants such as TRIO, Title V, Title III, those, depending on the specific criteria, may not have an impact, but a couple of those it could. Now, they recognize branch campuses. So we're going to go to a branch campus model, so that would make TRIO grants fully eligible to be funded at each location where you can. As you know, though, those are getting harder, having nothing related to do to us, because they stopped giving extra points if you had a previous grant. And gosh, for 30 years, that had been a part of that process. It could impact Title V just a bit, and if existing grants, it won't have an impact at all, but in the future, it could. Title III, not a problem. Department of Labor grants, not a problem. Anything related there is no issue at all. But we've also hired a legal team in DC that does this work, and they've been doing it for a long time. I've used them on a lot of projects over the years. And so they have experts in every single area and are working directly on our behalf with the Department of Ed, with the Department of Labor, with others to really make sure that we don't miss anything in that process. Minimal impact, almost none immediately, and then minimal perhaps long term, but we don't really see it as a huge issue. A good question. Oh, I've got a question here.
How will this college fund affect us who work in the facilities department?
Say it again.
How would this college one affect those who work in the facilities?
Oh, work in the
department?
facility?
Yeah.
Gosh, that hadn't come up, so I'll add that to the list. That hasn't been a question that we've talked about at this point, so thank you for that.
I got a text from a colleague here. Last summer, the trustees passed the, not resolutions, but the policies. And the task force were created in the fall to address these issues. In December, they're going to be delivered to you. How long will it take your team to evaluate the recommendations, plug them into the budget, and then get back to us on the impact of it? Is that January, February?
If there's budgetary impact, and there will be, that will have to go into the budget that will then be approved August 2020 as we go forward. So we'll at that time, and frankly, we, without knowing cost on some, and we know there will be some cost that's there, it's really hard for me to say how we'll do the rollout and implementation on that. Obviously, we're committed to making those changes. It's just a matter of time frame for how we do that. So thanks.
Dr. May, I have gotten a few questions regarding, being in HR, regarding the administrative side of the house. We understand everything as far as the academic side of the house, but I have a lot of people who have come to my office asking how would that side of the house be impacted by this change.
Administrative side, we're going to be, we had already decided, and you mentioned HR, that was one we were going to really consolidate anyway. I mean, frankly, we've had things going on 7 different ways. We've had to have people pay money back because of the differences in locations. We've had to pay money because of it, and we've had clean up other situations. So it just had gotten to the point where we realized that we were going to need to do things the same way across the entire district. So that's one example. Others we haven't yet talked through, but I will say this on it. One of the things that we've picked up on, and it really relates to span of control, and we're going to be looking at this. We have 35% of all supervisors have just 2 people reporting to them. That creates morale issues. It brings up issues of micromanagement in some cases and other things that are occurring. The best ratio is 6 to 8 to 1, which tends to create the healthiest environments and so forth. Now, we're going to be looking at that. That's not a sole driver, but certainly we are going to be talking about that where it makes sense to do that just for the welfare and benefit of our folks to make that happen. So that could have an impact on some folks as we figure out the right structural mix of that. But we're also looking at levels. Right now, we have 9 layers deep within the organization. That seems excessive to me. Again, it means that it's hard if you're at layer 9 to really have input, to feel engaged, to support what's going on. So we'll be looking at some of that in the process as well.
Dr. May, over here. Hi, I had a question about the students who are coming to our campuses through the ECHS and dual credit programs. Access is wonderful. I'm glad they're able to access, but has the district looked at any comprehensive intentional supports for them? Because for ECHS, they are specifically targeted because they are at risk of dropping out of school. So them getting in is great, but if we don't have the support here to make sure that they succeed, then we are crippling them when they do decide that they want to go on to the 4-year if their GPA is tanked because they did not have the correct supports while they were here.
Yeah, and there are, when we look at the overall numbers, we have, I think, 22,000 students in that category. About 400 of them fell into that problem area as we look at it. Fortunately, the good news is a lot of the tweaks and changes we've made are letting a lot of people that would have fallen through the cracks be more successful, but we're still going to work on that going forward. We care about every single one of them to get there. They, you know, as I mentioned earlier, with the Promise students, basically with the early college high school and with the PTech, we don't see those students. They go right on into four-year institutions. It's just literally a handful. We get about 8%, and that's about all. But the Promise students are the ones that didn't get any dual credit, that didn't have really any support or any services. The good news there with what we've done now is they're actually being, in terms of second semester, enrolling again in the second semester, they're 12 percentage points above our regular high school population. So we are seeing that what we're doing is helping, but we haven't learned everything that we need to do to drive that as well. So it's great. And yes, the answer is absolutely. As we're thinking about this, we are thinking about how do we support and what do we need to do. And let me tell you why. Not just because we're doing it. You may have heard that something passed the legislature called House Bill 3, which is the Public School Finance Act. What that did was put money available to school districts if they grow and expand early college high schools and PTECs, and it's worth a lot of money to them, upwards of $5,000 per student enrolled in a PTEC program. So the DISD alone stands to benefit $43 million new dollars just for getting more students enrolled in PTEC, early college high school dual credit that's there. There's some other things that can be tied into that as well. So the school districts are going to be highly motivated because a big part of their budget now is going to depend on partnerships with particularly community colleges. We're ahead of the game here, but we still, if that grows, and we've got to really make some additional changes. And let me say that was, and part of what has really bothered me about the lawsuit on the bond issue. We were set to go with $297 million. Virtually all of that was to go to take care of facilities related to PTECs, early college high school, help us do that here. We're going to help with Richland Collegiate High and others. So those needs haven't gone away as we've dealt with them. And so we'll be investing those dollars in the future. Oh, Iris is giving me this. Sit down. Hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking time. Thanks for your questions, comments, and I'm sure feel free to really Carlos, I guess you gave out your phone number so they know how to. Thank you very much.